So older folks are targeted less often, but when they fall victim, the dollar amounts are very high. They have their whole life savings at stake. And there's no ISAC for my mom.
Welcome to Cyber Focus from the McCrary Institute, where we explore the people and ideas shaping and defending our digital world. I'm your host, Frank Cilluffo, and as we kick off Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we couldn't ask for a better or more timely guest than Lisa Plaggemier. Lisa is the Executive Director of the National Cybersecurity Alliance, which has done yeoman's work to bring practical advice to the cybersecurity community, including many audiences that, quite honestly, have been forgotten in our cybersecurity world, some of the elderly and the like. And I'm really excited to have Lisa join us today. She also does a lot of work with U.S. Secret Service and previously served at Ford Motor Company. So Lisa, really excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
So I thought, I mean, obviously we're at the cusp of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and NCA has played a major role from the get-go for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. But before we jump into that, I thought a little bit about your mission, who you're focused on, how you go about doing the important work you do.
Yeah, our mission is public education on all things related to cybersecurity, and these days more and more related to fraud and scams. So we're the founders of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, also Data Privacy Week in January. And mainly it's all about meeting people where they are and educating people in terms that they can understand. So no jargon, no acronyms. We love our acronyms in cybersecurity, no acronyms. Stuff, frankly, that my mom and my kids will engage with. So we try to put the most engaging content out there on a variety of subjects with really plain spoken, layman's terms, clear advice on what people can do to protect themselves.
So not only speaking to our cybersecurity community, but more importantly, bringing cybersecurity to everyone else. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do have some events that focus on, where the guest list is full of security professionals and chief security officers. We have 2 events a year for people who work in training and awareness and human risk management. And those are really great events where we get to hear from practitioners in the space. But the crux of our mission is really educating the everyday American.
This year's Cybersecurity Awareness Month highlights 4 core issues. What are they and why are they important?
So first and foremost, multi-factor authentication.
MFA.
Making it easier to use. We don't even call it the same thing. At Amazon, it's an OTP. It's a one-time password. We might call it MFA, 2FA. That's confusing to the average consumer, especially those older adults that you talked about. So first of all, MFA, not just encouraging consumers to use it more, but companies to make it easier to use, maybe to enable it by default. That would be fantastic. Then we talk about good password habits. And these days, to have really good password habits, you probably need the help of a password manager.
Absolutely.
And then keeping all your stuff up to date, software and antivirus, your devices up to date. And then finally, this year, the one thing we've changed a little bit is not just talking about phishing or social engineering, but being more broad and talking about all scams and fraud. Because most of it's coming to us in the forms of, smishing, phishing, all those things.
Which is essential, and I want to pull the thread much more on the fraud and scam side, because I think that is precisely what we're seeing.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I thought it would also, and I think what NCA does uniquely is convey and package and bring some creativity to all of this. Help us understand some of these campaigns.
So we're also B2B2C. That's one way to think about it. So we create campaigns that are meant for the end consumer, but then we take those same campaign materials and package them up in campaign kits, and security professionals and well-meaning people all over the globe will download those and run a campaign in their school, in their company, in their government organization, at their senior center, whatever it is. So those people are carrying a lot of water for us. And that's how we get impressions and reach into the billions of people, especially during Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Billions. We are a tiny nonprofit of 9 people, and we reach billions of people every October. It's pretty exciting.
That's the asymmetry we want to see. Normally I say it's in the favors the attacker,
right.
But that's good to see.
Yeah. Creativity. Well, probably this is where I get to have a ton of fun. So somebody approached me a couple of years ago and said, hey, Lisa, if you could do something that was a little bit edgy and got the attention of people who don't care, who aren't paying attention to this stuff, who don't get up every day and worry about cybersecurity, who have other things to do with their lives, what would you do? And I said, I got exactly the idea. So when I was working in marketing and I was tapped on the shoulder to come join a security team, on day one, we were a newly spun off company from a large corporate parent. We had 4 incidents, and I was doing incident communications.
Lucky
so
you.
baptism by fire on day
to
one.
Say the least. Yep.
But I realized how sophisticated the adversary is and how well organized they are. And I just thought, those little things I'm doing that I think are going to make a difference, like changing that same old password by one character here or there, or adding a bang at the end, like, that's not going to cut it. I'm up against organized crime and nation state actors. So that was a light bulb moment for me personally when I realized that, we all act as our own risk managers, right? There's a ton of I hear this all the time when I speak to people in organizations. We do a lot of public speaking, especially during October. I'll do 8 or 9 virtual sessions a day.
Wow.
And people will say things that they just believe to be true. I spoke to the California Judicial Council last October, and I had a judge say, well, I don't need an antivirus because I use a VPN. Just a complete security myth, something that somebody told him or her at some point.
And there's a lot of myth busting here too, right?
I
think you've been on a crusade to remove that hacker with a hoodie, drinking the Jolt, cola, whatever it is. That's not what we're up against, is it?
So we came up with a series called Kubikle. It's Kubicle spelled with K's. Season 2 is out right now. It's like watching The Office, but it's The Office of the bad guys. So on a very modest advertising budget, we've had 18 million views of season 1.
Awesome.
And we're really looking forward to similar success in season 2, we hope. But that's an example of some of the creativity.
How do our viewers and listeners find that?
Kubikleseries.com,
Awesome.
but Kubicle spelled with K's, or it's also on YouTube.
Awesome.
So Kubicle series will resolve to staysafeonline.org/something Kubicle. But if you go to kubikleseries.com, you'll get there. Or our YouTube channel.
Awesome. Well, I will put that to my must watch going forward.
We use comedy. That's the thing is oftentimes it's the same advice that we're giving over and over and over again to the end user. But you have to package it up differently. We don't all consume the same types of media. Not everybody is going to find Kubicle or anything comedic interesting. We just started a new campaign for aging adults with our Then and Now campaign.
That's awesome.
So it's a nice, thin little workbook. It's not, there are other examples out there of workbooks for the older demographic that are, there's one from a government agency that's 60 pages long. There's one from another nonprofit that's 100 pages long. And I don't know about you, but my mom is not going to look at those things. So we boiled the ocean.
And I don't want to be her chief information security officer for life, right?
Going through that. So you can order these online, or there's a microsite that's a similar experience. And we've had such a more demand than we expected out of the gate.
That's awesome. And again, it's sort of, and I'd be curious, who is your target audience? How do you define success? Is it changing individual behaviors? I think. Is it influencing policy? Probably. Is it a combination of both, or is it? It's
really individual behaviors, but we don't have the visibility because of who we are and what we do. But when somebody picks up one of our campaigns and runs it in their organization, and if that's a government entity or a large corporation, they have a whole lot more data than I have. So the data I've got is, website views and time on page and impressions and all those sort of marketing and PR statistics. But if I'm at a large company and I run one of our campaigns with one of our campaign kits, one of my goals might be password manager adoption or demand for security services. That's how you know you're changing culture, is when the business starts asking you questions. You start getting invited to meetings you didn't even know were happening.
There you go.
That's how secure by design happens. We have to be involved upstream. So there's all kinds of ways to measure engagement and behavior change at that level, and that's one of the things we cover in our Convene events with people working in human risk management. Is how do you measure the culture? How do you measure behavior change at that level?
Which matters, right?
It does matter.
That's where
it absolutely
the action
matters.
Actually is.
Yeah, I think The hard thing is that a lot of technical people will ask, well, how do you know this stuff is working?
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody who's like incredible, I'm all soft skills. Like I don't have a math brain at all. I can tell you that just think about it. Is there ever a time when you see an ad or you read something and you immediately make a purchase decision or change your behavior? It doesn't work that way.
Not for me, but
no, we're kind of on a journey.
Mm-hmm.
So the important thing for us is to have content that engages different demographics, that meets people where they are, and maybe sparks some curiosity, doing a little bit edgier things like Kubikle, doing things that are, honestly, this is super cute. So doing things that are visually engaging.
Absolutely.
And then, hoping
and
for that light bulb.
Friendly, right?
Correct.
That's the beauty of the work,
right.
I think you have, is it's practical, it's tangible,
right?
And it's not trying to boil the ocean. So.
No, when we did a campaign for April Fool's Day called AI Fools, it kind of wrote itself. It turned into an evergreen campaign. We decided that the call to action was going to be super, super targeted, because we could all talk about AI and all the issues with it all day long.
We spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about it.
I'm sure. Yep. So we boiled it down to having a safe word, like just targeting deepfake phone calls when you're not on the phone with who you think you're on the phone with. And we did a series of radio ads that were on iHeartRadio and some outdoor advertising in DC. And all those same materials are available for people to download and run a campaign in their organization. So you can throw the radio ads on your security portal, or
my
in Slack.
mom or my aunt or someone gets a phone call and it doesn't include the safe word, they know I'm not kidnapped, or not me. I'm too old, but my kids.
Exactly.
Or their grandkids. So.
But we had to be really targeted. It's just deepfake phone calls, and it's just talking about safe words. If we tried to cover too much at once, like the 100-page workbook would probably does.
You'd be drowning.
It's right. And you just don't get the same kind of engagement.
And it doesn't trigger the action. And what triggers that action point could be different for different people.
Exactly.
And you got to get to where they are.
It's the old adage, I know half my marketing is working, I just don't know which half.
Exactly.
But so you have to keep going with all of it.
Awesome. Let's get to some of the fraud, because I think this is also in the myth busting category, and this is not just the consumer protection set of issues, right? It's much broader, and it includes that, and we still need that phone number that someone can call. But beyond that, we're dealing with syndicates, we're dealing with criminal enterprises to one extent or another.
I think we're dealing with nation states too.
And nation states and proxies of nation states.
Yeah. I think if you look at something like pig butchering, for example, let's just take that. Matt Cronin, when he was the investigator at the House Select Committee on the CCP, wrote a great paper on the fentanyl crisis and traced that back to a kind of a kingpin who's at the top of the food chain named Broken Tooth Coy. And he sits on an advisory council or something for the CCP. He's also at the top of the food chain on pig butchering. So it's...
No pun intended.
No. So it gets pretty... I think you can pretty easily tie those types of scams that are... The scale and the speed of it is... when I talk to folks that are in fraud at different financial services institutions, nobody's thinking this is just random. This is a strategy because it's so well orchestrated, and they've I don't like to talk about humans being the weakest link, but the weakest link in this case is the individual as compared to our institutions. So I can hack away at our banks and, probably not come away with any cash. I might cause disruption. I might come away with some data, but I'm probably not going to come away with millions of dollars. I can hack away at individual customers of the bank and come away with millions of dollars. And there's no ISAC for my mom.
Yeah.
We've done a great job over the years of protecting our different sectors of our economy and standing up things like ISACs to do that. But the weak point is that cross-sector data sharing. And there's been
it's really
some
democratized crime, right? Because it touches everyone now.
It does. So older folks are targeted less often, but when they fall victim, the dollar amounts are very high. They have their whole life savings at stake. Younger folks, according to we do a report every year called O-Behave, an annual report on cybersecurity attitudes and behaviors, because I wanted some consumer sentiment as a marketer. Younger people are more likely to lose money or data, but the dollar amounts are much smaller.
Mm-hmm. And I look back, I mean, at the start of the internet and email, you had the 419 scams coming out of Nigeria, princes and princesses. That has changed dramatically, and the scale, the speed, and the scope as well.
There still are those. I mean, if you look like Sextortion and the Yahoo Boys, I mean, there are still
That's
smaller.
Actually horrific.
Yeah, it's terrible. There are still those sorts of organizations in existence, but something like pig butchering with, the
Can
last.
You explain pig butchering for our audience?
So it usually starts. I mean, we're all getting these texts multiple times a day that look like. I got one that said, "I left my shoes in your car." Mm-hmm. They're just looking for me to respond because what do I get immediately? The mental image of somebody standing on the street with barefoot, missing their shoes. Yeah. So it kind of tugs at your heartstrings, or it'll just be something that looks like a wrong number.
I seem to get that one all the time. Yeah.
So what they're hoping, they're kind of weaponizing our friendliness, maybe weaponizing our loneliness. Mm-hmm. And so they're hoping that we're just going to respond. And they know they have a live human on the other end. Mm-hmm. So eventually over time, these are long cons. They're going to develop a friendship, maybe tell you about a great vacation they took that was all funded because their uncle taught them how to invest in crypto. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to crypto, there are a lot of us, me included, who don't know that much about it, but have FOMO. Mm-hmm. We feel like we've missed out because somebody we know in our friend circle has maybe made a bunch of money. Yep. Exactly. Yep. So they're weaponizing that FOMO as well. So they'll get us to invest in crypto. They have fake crypto exchange websites, fake statements showing us we're making a lot of money. They might even let us make a small withdrawal. Mm-hmm. But eventually, when we want to really withdraw some of these earnings,
disappear.
They're going to say, well, you have to pay some taxes first with new money. So do that, and then you can withdraw the rest. At that point, it's the sunk cost fallacy. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm in this deep. I'm starting to think this might not be real, but I should just pay these taxes so I can get this money. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, it's all gone. Some of those victims are also then turned into money mules. Mm-hmm. And I know there's been some discussion about whether or not we should even be calling this pig butchering. That's a literal translation from the Chinese. And some of us, or Erin West, who's an advocate in this space, runs a thing called Operation Shamrock. I mean, it's a attention-getting term, and that's how we're viewed, as a pig to be butchered. And we feel like, even though it's kind of a crude term, it really brings it home what's happening.
Absolutely.
Pretty descriptive.
And it's building trust. Over time. So these aren't onesies and twosies. Now here's the one thing I always said. So you could send out 1 million, and all you need is one click, and the adversary is successful.
Well,
right?
And sending that 1 million now is very different with AI. And then when you're using human trafficked slave labor in basically a concentration camp to do it, and there's beatings and dismemberments and killings and sexual assault in these places. Absolutely. I mean, it's just so tragic on so many levels.
I'm going to throw one policy issue. This is why we need DMARC, and it needs to be spread everywhere. So at least you have a sense of who the sender is, and at least there's some likelihood of it being flagged if you're sending too many.
I mean, the only comment I'll make in regards to policy is I do not think it would be a bad idea if we had a scam czar at this point, because the adversary is so well organized. I mean, the latest Secret Service report I saw, which is probably a little out of date. So there's 5 or 6 of these scam centers with hundreds of thousands of people in them, and they're growing. I mean, if you look at the aerial photos that Erin West has, you can see the construction happening on a regular basis. They're just expanding like crazy.
So not to pull you too far into that policy discussion, but where should that sit? Is that Secret Service, or should it be FCC, or should it be?
I have no idea. I just know that there are too many, I think, my opinion, too many private sector organizations with competing priorities and a lot of concerns about the privacy of the victims when it comes to data sharing. So if I'm a bank and I have signal that my customer is being defrauded and they're trying to withdraw their whole 401k.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have tellers or call center people that are having to act as social workers because I've got somebody deep in the trance of a scam.
Mm-hmm.
They would love to have more data from social media platforms, ISPs, telecoms.
Because they are campaigns. They're not one-offs.
Exactly. So I don't know how you get that private sector, cross-sector data sharing happening in a real meaningful way without the government playing a role and giving them cover, honestly, too, especially when it comes to privacy considerations of I think there needs to be some legal cover there, just like there's legal cover for the ISACs.
Absolutely, which I actually haven't given a whole lot of thought to this, but it's something I definitely want to pull the thread on in the future.
So there are some small groups that are starting some data sharing. Some big brands have come together with some nonprofits and other companies, but it's kind of heroic efforts by small groups of individuals and not really institutionalized yet and not scaled.
So deep fakes and all the various, you mentioned some of the AI and how it's applied in some of these spaces. It's getting harder and harder and harder to spot.
Yeah. And unfortunately, our research tells us that people still think they'll be able to tell the difference.
And they won't.
And you won't.
So how do we automate some of that? Or do we? So my mom asks me lots of questions on the cyber side. What should I be telling her? What should she be looking for to?
You need to independently verify things, everything. So
trust but verify.
Use a safe word when it comes to phone calls and things like that, or video calls. FaceTime, Zoom, all of that. I have a friend. He's on our board, Perry Carpenter, who's been able to break all of the tools that are supposed to be able to tell whether or not something is a deep fake. So basically, if you have something that's AI generated and you make some tweaks to it, you can kind of fool some of the tech that's being. But now this is a changing space, and the minute this comes out of my mouth, it could be wrong because it's evolving so quickly.
So fast.
But I haven't seen anything yet that 100% can tell you whether or not you're looking at something real or
and
fake.
You can really capture someone's voice. You can capture their images. Right. And it doesn't take a whole lot to put together a persona that is hard to differentiate, even yourself.
Yeah. I mean, there's an upside to this. I mean, there's kind of a positive way to use these things. So there are vendors now, I've met some of them at our Convene conference, that will allow you to make deepfake phone calls to your employees. Just like we do simulated phishing, you can do simulated deepfake phone calls to your employees to see if they, give up their MFA code or, in a simulated MFA attack, for example.
And I think that's great, but I still think that's reactive, and
it is.
And at some point, so you sort of mentioned where government and the banks and others can come together. How could that be even nurtured or fostered?
I think there's some competing priorities. I mean, if I'm a social media company, some of the things that I probably need to do to work harder to get bad actors off my platforms might actually be at odds with some of my business goals.
Absolutely, it is.
I think, there's been regulation in Australia and the UK that is holding the financial services institutions responsible if they have signal that their customers being defrauded, but that feels a little anti-American to us because if I have a right to my money, it's my money, and I should be able to withdraw it. So that creates really awkward situations for the banks. It's traumatic for the bank employees. It's traumatic for the person on the phone trying to talk somebody out of withdrawing their entire 401k to hand it to a scammer. I mean, it's a bad situation. That's why I think we need something like a Scam Czar whose primary goal it is to look at this across the public and private sectors and see what makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think that is something. It's hit that tipping point, or it has already tipped, and we need something. And I
think reality is probably, like any difficult deal you negotiate or any divorce, every party's a little bit unhappy. There's no silver bullet here. There's work that a lot of different sectors can do. I mean, that's what we're talking about when we say it's cross-sector. There's no one entity that can solve this problem. It's kind of heavy-handed to say, well, this is the bank's problem, like they've done in the UK and Australia, but that's where the scam ends. The scam starts with a text or a direct message or something else. So I think it's helpful to look across the entire food chain of what's happening there.
Have we done enough for that? Because I go back to sort of some of the counter narcotics efforts where we only started having major impact when we looked at it as an enterprise, as a business.
Oh, you have to look at this as an enterprise.
Illicit. You have to look at it and it's going to take a campaign to defeat a campaign, right?
Right.
Otherwise, you have a couple of big arrests, but that doesn't make a drip in the bucket.
No, ask the Secret Service. You cannot arrest your way out of this problem.
Yeah. And I think that what differentiates this from traditional crime is the private sector has to be a big proponent and they're on the front lines and many of them want to. They don't always have the authorities. They don't know how to put all the pieces together.
Right. Or they don't get collaboration from, I'm sure there are financial services companies that would love to have more data from social media companies, more indicators of fraud. That would be super helpful. And that's happening to some degree, but not in any large scalable way. I think that's what they've exploited. We've got a lot of organizations, fraud teams that don't talk to security teams, that don't talk to trust and safety teams. And so if you're still siloed in your organization, I think the call to action here is that all needs to be seen as one, you could almost argue in some organizations that should all roll up to the chief security officer.
I would agree with that. I would almost say that chief security officer and chief information security officer have to come together, inextricably interwoven. And in the cyber world, we talk about IT-OT convergence, and rarely do you have a combined SOC, but where you can have full visibility, and can't do a whole lot until you have visibility. So,
and trust and safety teams have been, subject to being politicized in some organizations, and it's been a little bit controversial. I don't know that they're as empowered as they should be to really be advocates for their users. Because remember, at social media companies, the users aren't the customers.
Yep.
So it's a difficult position.
So where does public awareness fit into all of these institutional efforts? And I know you've done some amazing work, and I'd like to hear a little more about the K through 12 as well. So we talked a little bit about the older demographic, but
K through 12 is coming next year.
Boom. Good.
There's a whole lot of great information out there. There are great nonprofits doing work in K through 12. So what we're working on now is sort of that competitive landscape, so we can see what's available and where are the gaps, and where do we need maybe simpler information that's more targeted, that's more digestible, snackable content, if you will, things that people can learn quickly, that resonate fast, and to enable them and inspire them. I mean, a lot of the work we do is based on the behavioral science model, COM-B. So before you exhibit a behavior, you need capability, which is knowledge, opportunity, which we all have with technology all day long, and motivation. Motivation is the hardest part. You can know something, I can know I should go to the gym tomorrow morning, but whether or not I'm motivated to get up and do it, that's a whole nother thing. We're very, very emotional, that motivation piece. So that's really what we strive for, is making sure that we're doing things that motivate people, and then making sure we do things that get your attention. If I don't have your attention, you're not going to engage in whatever it is I'm saying.
Exactly.
So we've got to do things that maybe sometimes are a little bit edgy or unexpected, to try and get people's attention. If I go to you at the outset and say, maybe a title to an email says something about protecting yourself or protecting your company, and you don't care, like that's just not interesting to you. You're not going to open the email.
Exactly.
So I have to work hard to get your attention, and sometimes it's a little bit of a bait and switch, but I'll take it.
Exactly. And when you're looking at the younger demographic, they are digital natives too, so they can also be the solution
but
drivers,
they're not security natives.
But they're not security aware. That's the last thing they're thinking about. Exactly.
Yeah.
I know my younger kids are much more, and they're not so young, but it's all TikTok. So it's not even email. They'd look at me like I have three heads, that they never look at email.
Yeah. But, we try and do things that are seasonal. So around Valentine's Day, we'll talk about romance scams. And we've had some really, we've done some really cute graphics in the past that look like the little cards you get your kids at CVS, but they have some sort of cybersecurity phrase on them. We'll do, safe holiday shopping around the holidays. We did a campaign lately with LinkedIn about job scams when they brought out their new certification process to make sure that a job is actually legitimate. We're doing more and more talks. This year we've partnered with a couple of different scam survivors. Wow. And we're using a rug pull in one of those stories. So we're not going to reveal until the end that the woman you've been listening to for 40 minutes is an actual survivor herself, because people have a tendency to victim blame and victim shame.
Absolutely.
And that's actually, I think the
all of cyber has been a little bit blame the victims. So,
we've
got to flip that equation.
Right. So if I can get you listening to her as an expert in the field for half an hour before I reveal to you that one of the stories we just told you was hers, then I think maybe you might understand that you could be vulnerable too.
Yeah, love it. Lisa, I mean, you guys are in the middle of such important work. What questions didn't I ask that I should have?
So one of the things we've noticed, we have been partnered with CISA for a long time on the Cybersecurity Awareness Month campaign. And we've always tried to be good partners to government overall. So we've got relationships with folks at different departments and agencies that are putting out consumer awareness on cybercrime, scams, and fraud. But one of the things we've noticed is, they all have people doing this good work, very well intentioned, and they all have budgets, big or small, mostly on the small side. And they might have enough budget to go to an ad agency and do a campaign. But because it's all, even though it's incredibly well intentioned, because it's all disparate, it's just not getting share of mind with the public. And then the other thing we know is that the public doesn't, I think our latest study said 8% of people turn to the government when they're looking for advice on the safe use of technology. They're more likely to go to a tech company or a nonprofit or get that education elsewhere.
Or places of faith or anyone they trust, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Family member, a friend. So I that's one of my longer term goals, is to find a way to, and then IC3, people don't know what it is. They don't know how to report. These crimes are severely underreported. I'm not sure that name resonates with the public.
I think you're right.
IC3.gov. Maybe we should call it something else. So if there were ever an opportunity for us to partner with and have more of a whole of government approach, so that there's one overarching message that has and a campaign big enough that has a chance to resonate with the public and get some share of mind, I think that's one of the goals that I have.
And maybe success is just getting people to think, and I call staying curious.
Right.
That is going to be part of the solution, right?
Absolutely.
Lisa, thank you for the fight you're fighting every day for many of the people who didn't realize they're part of this challenge, but are essential to success. Thank you for the hard work you're doing, and onward and upward. So
we have a great team. It's all the team.
Well, thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Cyber Focus. If you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing. Your ratings and reviews help us reach more listeners. Drop us a line if you have any ideas in terms of topics, themes, or individuals you'd like for us to host. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and stay curious.